Thanks for tuning in to Gardening with Gutner. I'm your host, Todd Gutner, and today we're diving into a very delicious topic, berries. See what we did there? Here in Maine, we're lucky to grow some of the best around, perfect for pies, jams, or just sprinkling over your cereal. Plus, they're bursting with antioxidants and nutrients. First up, raspberries. These ruby red jewels may be small, but they're mighty with their sweet tart flavor. However, they're a bit of a diva in the berry world, needing just the right conditions and care to really thrive. To get the scoop on growing them successfully, we spent time with master gardener Tom Witwicky. It's the middle of summer and it's raspberry season. Master gardener Tom Witwicky is with us. Your raspberries look amazing back here.
They are looking good, but most of the work was back in April.
Back in April, okay. Brace yourself. April 7th? No leaves on the trees. I'm wearing a jacket. Tom, what are we doing here?
We're doing the real work, preparing for a good raspberry harvest.
Ah, and what does the real work entail?
Well, you have to understand, with summer-bearing raspberries, it bears fruit on last year's canes. They're called floricanes. So the job is to remove the previous year's canes, which already fruited, thin the new floricanes, and then finally trellis them.
Okay, so you'd start with some pruning. Let's head in here and see what we got.
Okay, sure. Let's see, here for instance is an old cane. You can tell it's old because the bark is all peeling and things like that.
Yeah, flaky, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you cut it, there's no green there showing at all.
Sure.
It's brown and dead.
Okay.
This, however, is a new floricane, and it's a good sized one, so I'm definitely going to leave that.
Yep.
And then finally, I'm just going to tie it up to this trellis wire in order to keep it off the ground when it's fruited. When the raspberries fruit, the cane becomes pretty heavy, and will lie on the ground unless you tie it up.
So this is for ease of picking. Anything else?
It definitely does that. What it also does is leave room in the middle of the bed for the new canes, which are called primocanes, to be growing this year, which gives them more air and sunlight.
Okay. And is there anything else that you would do before this is going to end up fruiting?
Yeah, so once I finish trellising everything, I generally mulch the bed, keeps down weeds, and feeds the soil as well.
Okay. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not digging April. It's starting to get a little chilly. Can you get us back to summer, please? You got like a flux capacitor back here somewhere?
Sure, let's give it a try.
Whoa, that was a little bumpy. So you did a lot of work back then. What have you been doing since?
Well, apart from fertilizing and weeding, really nothing.
Really nothing? That sounds pretty good. I like nothing. The rain this season has been relentless. Has it presented you any problems?
Well, it's not the best year. They like it a little drier to ripen especially. But it's especially important that the vines have been tied up, because otherwise they'd be on the ground, hard to pick, the fruit would rot.
And and you want to keep the fruit. That's the most important part. Speaking of fruit, you've got some new growth here. Those are, I think you call them primocanes?
That's right. This is an example of a primocane which grew this year. And the berries will form on this cane, which will be then called a floricane next year. Okay. So this is next year's fruit.
That's next year's fruit. And everything that's fruiting now, you trim off at the end of the season?
Or in the spring.
Or in the spring.
Yes.
Got it.
Either one.
Speaking of the fruit, the most important part, it's ripening up. How can you tell when it's ready to go and ready to eat?
That's a good question. The berries turn a darker red. This is almost ready, not quite.
Okay.
This is probably a better example of the red that it turns. And also the fruit comes off with a gentle tug.
Oh yeah, that was easy.
If you have to pull on it, it's not ready.
It's not ready. Okay, let me give it a shot. You're gonna eat yours. Let's see, how about this guy here maybe? Yes! Here we go. Boy, that's so good. Sweet, but just a little tart. Love raspberries. And go get yours. It's raspberry season here in New England. And we'll see you next time on Gardening with Gutner. Mainers love to pick berries, especially pick your own strawberries. It's fun to take the kids to a pick your own farm and get quarts of the luscious berry. They probably eat more than they save. We met Dave Hanley from the University of Maine Cooperative Extension at a strawberry farm to learn how to grow our own strawberry patch. All right, David Hanley here from the University of Maine Cooperative Extension. It's berry season in Maine, but when in Maine you need to specify because the blueberry gets all the credit. Strawberries shouldn't be overlooked though.
No, strawberries start the berry season off and gets us excited about berries for the whole summer.
Yeah, and how did the strawberry get its name? My producer says there's a great story here.
Well, there's 3 stories. It's
boy.
actually kind of a mystery because it's thought that when strawberries first started being marketed over in Europe, they were sold in baskets of straw, and so people started associating the two things. Another theory is that they actually wound the berries around little twigs of straw and sold them that way as a braid.
Oh, interesting.
And then finally, another theory is that because the berries are kind of out from the plant itself, they were called strewn berries, and that eventually developed into strawberries.
Yeah. So it could be one of the 3.
Yep, pick your choice.
pick your choice. Whichever one you like the best. How hard is it for the home gardener to kind of develop their own strawberry patch? Is it difficult?
A home gardener who's accustomed to growing vegetables and flowers shouldn't have any problem at all with strawberries. It's just a little bit different in that you're thinking about a perennial crop. So you want this plant to be going for 3 to 5 years as opposed to an annual crop where put it in, forget about it at the end of the year and start over.
Okay. Well, we have a really good strawberry patch right behind us. Why don't we go dig into it and see what we got?
Sounds good.
Okay.
So this bed that we're in here is picking for its first year, and that means it was planted last year. And it will keep going for probably 3 or 4 more harvest seasons. Now, typically what happens is that a grower will plant his plants in the springtime, the first year. So he put those beds in the ground in nice rows like you see here. But the flowers that come out that first year, we pinch them off because we're trying to get the plant to establish a big, thick group of plants with runners. These daughter plants that come out and root in between those originally planted crowns and form us a nice thick bed that'll give us a good crop the following year. Now, after that first harvest, they'll actually go through, and this is going to happen here in just a couple of weeks. He'll go through here and mow these leaves off. He'll narrow up the rows because he doesn't want the beds to get too thick, and he'll put fertilizer down. This is the time we put our fertilizer down at the end of the harvest season. Then he'll protect them in the winter with some straw, and hopefully we'll have a good crop next year.
How many years can you get fruit from?
Plant the first year, and hopefully we're going to harvest for 3 or 4 years after that, and then the bed gets older and it starts to get run down. It's time to start a new bed.
Oh, interesting.
Critical thing to remember there is when you start your new strawberry bed, start it someplace else. Never follow strawberries with strawberries because the life of the bed gets shorter and shorter because the soil gets tired of having strawberries in it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get to the fruit part, which is the part that everyone's really waiting for. Let's go taste some of this stuff and see what we got.
Good deal.
All right, folks, look at that beauty. David, this is why we really came.
Yeah, but interestingly, a strawberry actually isn't a berry anatomically.
Come on.
No, see these individual seeds on here? Those are the true fruit of the strawberry plant.
Huh.
This is what we call an aggregate, where all these fruit huddle together, and then there's this fleshy piece of plant tissue that comes up to protect them, and that's the delicious part that we eat, we call a strawberry.
Yeah, it sure is delicious. Pests, insects, disease, do we have to worry about that with the strawberry?
Well, yes, of course, but fortunately with strawberries, it's not a huge pest complex that we have to worry about, but there are a few things that concern us, especially during the bloom period. When strawberries are in flower, there's a couple of insects, one that will chew the buds right off so you don't get a good crop. Then there's another one that attacks the flowers. Have you ever picked a strawberry that has a really seedy end or
Yes.
cat facing? This is called tarnished plant bug, and growers do have to control it when it gets bad. But other than that, we typically don't have too much trouble.
At the end of the season, winters in Maine can be harsh. How does the strawberry handle winters here?
Well, interestingly, strawberries aren't that hardy a plant.
Wow.
The reason they survive our winter so well is because they're very low growing, and they typically get covered up by snow. And snow is an excellent insulator and will protect the plant.
Sure is.
But it's not very dependable.
Right. That's been a problem lately.
Right. So you have to hedge your bets. And the way growers do that is to put a thick coating of straw on the plants after they've gone dormant in the fall. And usually this is between Thanksgiving and Christmas time. But you want to make sure the plants are dormant. You don't want to get ahead of yourself and put the mulch on too early, because fall is when strawberries form their flower buds for next spring. So if you put the mulch on too early, you stop that process and you'll actually reduce your yield for the next year.
We're picking strawberries today, right?
Yeah.
Is it fun?
Yeah.
Is it tasty?
Yeah.
Okay, we picked the most special strawberry. We each have one, right? All right, you ready to give it the old taste test?
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's eat away. Cheers. Here we go. Oh wow. What do you guys think?
Juicy.
Juicy? Mm-hmm. Very juicy. Is it flavorful? Is strawberry your favorite fruit?
Yeah.
Yeah? At least it is right now, right? Yes, well, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your summer, and we'll see you next time. Keep your growing going on Gardening with Gutner. Bye. Wave bye, guys.
Bye.
Wouldn't it be nice to go out to your garden and pick fresh strawberries? Not only is David Hanley an expert on strawberries, he knows a lot about Maine's most popular berry, the blueberry. According to the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, Maine is the largest producer of wild blueberries in the entire country. And these tiny, antioxidant-packed berries cover over 44,000 acres of fields and have been growing here in Maine for more than 10,000 years. Whether they are low bush or high bush, David shows us how to grow these amazing berries. Our discussion on berries continues, and this is the most iconic berry in Maine. It is the blueberry. We have an expert. It's David Hanley from the Maine Cooperative Extension. Expert not only on blueberries, but also small fruits and vegetables. It's been challenging for blueberries the last 6 months weather-wise. Rain, a ton of it the last month or two. And we had some cold temperatures too earlier in the season.
Yeah, it has been a challenge. We had very cold temperatures in February, but fortunately at that point, the blueberries were as dormant as they could be.
Okay.
So for the most part, we've seen a little bit of winter injury on the more tender varieties, but overall not too bad. Then we had that frost in May, and the blueberries were in bloom at that point, which means they could get hit by that frost and hurt. But fortunately, most of the pollination had already occurred.
Oh, good.
And when that happens, the berries are much more able to tolerate a frost.
And they did.
It looks as though the crop is pretty good, but we do need some sunshine to get some sugars into this fruit and sweeten up the berries.
Yeah, there's a couple of types of blueberries in Maine, low bush, high bush. Discuss that a little bit.
Well, the low bush blueberry is what we consider the wild blueberry of Maine. So when we're talking about those classic cans of Maine wild blueberries for your pies, or nowadays the frozen berries,
sure,
those are coming from the low bush, which is a different species, mostly grown in the down east area, harvested mechanically or with rakes. Okay. The high bush blueberry is a different species, although it is also native to Maine. This one is largely used for pick your own farms or for retail stands.
Let's talk about caring for berries. Like, say you go to your garden center and you want to start doing some blueberries. What should you be looking for? How hard is it to grow them?
They're not too difficult to grow, but you do need to know what you're doing. So
okay,
take some time, do your homework. First of all, when you go to that nursery, make sure you're picking the right variety, because there's only a handful that are really hardy enough to make it in most parts of Maine. So look it up, make sure it's one like Patriot, Blue Crop, Blue Ray, or Northland. These are ones that are very, very hardy, so want to read it hardiest.
And when you say hardy, because you're concerned about the cold temperatures in the winter?
Because the cold temperatures will kill those flower buds that give us our fruit.
Okay. So you bring those home and put them in the ground?
Well, hopefully, first, you had your soil test done, so you know where to put them in the ground. Blueberries are in the same family as rhododendrons, azaleas, mountain laurel, so if you've got a place in your yard where those are happy, chances are your blueberries are going to be happy there too.
Okay, so get your soil tested. That's really important.
Right, because these want an acid soil. They want a pH of about 4.8 to 5.2, whereas your vegetable garden wants a much higher pH. They want a pH of about 6.8 to 7.
So if your pH is off, how can you rectify that?
If it's too high, which is what's typical, we add sulfur to the soil and work it in.
Okay.
This takes time, so usually you need to do this the fall before you plant, and that's why I said you have to think ahead. When you say, I want to grow blueberries, you need to have that soil test done and give yourself time to correct any problems.
Speaking of time and patience, once you have this plant in the ground, you want to be patient before you actually pick fruit, right?
That's correct. And a lot of people will buy a plant that's in a pot about that big, and it's usually 1 or 2 years old, and they're very happily watching it fruit and flower. And what that does is slows the growth of that plant down. So what I usually recommend is that be patient, and for the first 3 years, gently rub those flower clusters off when they appear in the spring and May.
Really?
Just rub them off. That encourages this vegetative growth, these nice healthy shoots that we see here. So I'm going to get a nice tall bush that's going to have lots of fruit on it. If I let it fruit every year, it's going to stay small, it's going to be unhappy, and it's going to take a long time to get up to full production.
Okay. Speaking of healthy and big bushes, at some point you do need to cut back a little bit. You do need to do some trimming.
Right. Once they get to this point where they're fruiting productively, you should actually prune them every year.
Oh.
And this happens during the dormant season. Usually I'm doing this in March because you need the snow to be down because I need to make some cuts.
Okay.
But the rule of thumb is basically when you look underneath here, you can see there's a whole bunch of different canes. And each bush should consist of about 10 to 15 canes. And it's going to want to do more than that. And if you let it do more than that, the bush gets too big and it starts to shade itself out. So every year we cut out some of the oldest growth in favor of some new growth.
Okay.
So in actuality, these canes should range in age from 1 to 6 years old. If a cane's older than 6, it's getting tall, it's getting leggy, it's not productive.
Okay. All right. I mean, these are obviously ripe and ready to pick, right?
Well, if you want to make sure your blueberry is going to taste good when you pick it, you want to make sure it's blue all the way around that stem mark. If it's still white, if it's still red, it's going to be tart.
That's definitely sweeter.
There you go.
Yeah. David, this is awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much for all this expert knowledge on blueberries. Now you know, and you also know that they're in season and you can go to your local U-Pick farm. All right, so that's the latest Gardening with Gutner. If you want more on blueberries, go to our website, newscentermaine.com. Also go to our Instagram page, Gardening with Gutner. Take care, we'll see you next time. And that's a wrap on this very special episode of Gardening with Gutner. From the sweet tart punch of raspberries to Maine's beloved wild blueberries, we've explored the very best our state has to offer. A big thank you to the University of Maine Cooperative Extension expert David Hanley and Master Gardener Tom Witwicky for sharing their expertise. Whether you're planting, picking, or just enjoying these flavorful berries, remember, get your growing going with Gardening with Gutner.